The chef brought it himself and banged it down on the table, presumably to get a close look at the ignoramus who didn't know the rules. Many more visits followed, and the last one was in June 1979 when we had sold our dream home and moved to a one-bedroom apartment in the center of Hamilton prior to leaving Canada in August of that year. Patience, I'll explain later. We had an embarrassing problem with the sleeping arrangements. We slept on the portable beds we had borrowed, and Mom and Dad used our bedroom. The problem was, our horny next-door neighbor, whose bedroom was only a thin wall away, was sex-mad and almost daily had a female companion with whom he enjoyed you-know-what and did God knows what, loudly, and then relaxed with a bottle of champagne, maybe a cigarette, and started all over again. The only solution was to introduce myself and diplomatically explain our dilemma. We had a good laugh and a drink. He was very understanding, and my request for him to take a break from his enviable sex life came at a good time. He was going on holiday for the very same 3 weeks that my folks would be there. I couldn't believe our luck. Rita's mother visited us in 1977, courtesy of a family collection. The hard-working, but not too well-off gentle lady really needed a holiday. Her health wasn't too good, but we gave her the best time we could, taking this into account. Apparently, she never stopped talking about the trip until the day she passed away that New Year's Eve. We all miss you, Mary. Rest in peace. Thanks for your patience. I just had to record those memorable visits by our loved ones. Back to work. I could now seek employment with my new Canadian qualification and get remunerated for my knowledge instead of gift of the gab. I say that because it's the cruel connotation of a salesperson. Hamilton, a very industrialized city, was the home of one of Canada's largest employers, Dominion Foundries and Steel Limited. This second largest steel company in Canada, along with its many subsidiaries, employed in the region of 12,000 happy people. I say that because this old, well-established family business, but now a public company, had a reputation of being very paternal in its thinking. I obtained an interview and was hired in the employee benefits department. Just up my alley. I knew that I too was going to be happy when the treasurer introduced himself as Tom Van. And when I inquired whether I called him Mr. Van or Tom, he replied, "We don't stand on ceremony here, Alan." My life was complete, and we were financially secure. Incidentally, there were no unions at Dofasco. One of my job functions was to keep abreast of industry standards and report upwards. The profit-sharing plan, which had been in existence for many years, was still the envy of and talked about all over North America. I went on numerous conferences in Toronto and the States and was often approached by strangers who asked how our outfit could get by with no unions. I always replied that I didn't want to upset anybody, but we looked after our people. In fact, the company motto is, "Our product is steel, but our strength is people." On a trip to Chicago, the Windy City, I stayed at the famous Drake Hotel. The person in front of me, at the check-in desk, asked if his room was a nice one. The clerk replied, "It should be, sir, for $45 a night." I thought this must be a local custom and asked the same question. She smiled and simply said, "You have a $65 a night suite, sir." She was right. I had a hard time finding the bed. It was an extravagance that was new to me. There were lots of reasons why Dofasco was the place to work. For example, every year it gave a huge Christmas party. All employees, current and former, as well as a multitude of other people were invited. Every child under the age of 16 received a gift. Sorry to rant on, but the company worked so very hard at being an above-average corporate citizen. It certainly succeeded, and its efforts deserve a mention. Maybe other companies could learn something. The world was my oyster, and I was now wallowing in relative success, but wishing I could share it with my family. Here comes the rod again. Success is not where you are. It's how far you have come since you started. Mom and Dad visited us many times, and this helped. But it was agony every time we had to say goodbye. I became more and more homesick. Rita wasn't too bad, but I was terrible, and she finally agreed that we return to England. The only proviso was she had to finish her course at McMaster University. The company, recognizing my feelings, kindly offered me a 12-month sabbatical. It would not have been fair to them, so I gratefully declined, and we started to prepare for our departure from the place we had called home for 9 years. Now you know why we sold our house and moved into the one-bedroom apartment? After many parties, even one at Tom, and after sad goodbyes, we were on our way. But not directly to England. Trip of a lifetime, 1979. Having made the decision to return to England, we thought about how long we had been on this continent and how little we had seen of the USA. We wanted to rectify this before we left for good, but we didn't want to spend a fortune. With this in mind, we bought an Ameripass for 30 days. This was a ticket entitling us to unlimited journeys on the Greyhound buses, affectionately known as tin buses. Travel sometimes broadens the mind, more often lengthens the tongue, but most often it flattens the wallet. Using the map provided by Greyhound, we noted each target city and the driving times between, then planned our route. We wanted to see as much as possible within the allotted time. The time for this trip of a lifetime came. We set off looking like two well-dressed hobos, each of us sporting a knapsack and one small sports bag. We flew to Ottawa to say our farewells to Brother Joe, back to Toronto, and then flew to Calgary, Alberta, to visit old friends for a couple of days. If you ever go to Canada, you must visit Banff National Park. Apparently, it is now the most visited holiday resort in the world, for the Japanese tourists. It is awe-inspiring, Lake Louise in particular. Banff Springs Hotel is magnificent and famous the world over. After an enjoyable visit with our friends, our pulses raced as we boarded our westward-bound silver chariot in Calgary. The long distances between cities meant that we had to travel at night, arrive in our planned destination early morning, and resume traveling late the same night if we were to complete the marathon journey. Sleeping on the bus was not easy, but we were equipped with blow-up pillows, which helped immensely. Our first major city was Vancouver, a 17-hour bus ride away. We got off in Salmon Arm, British Columbia, which is about the halfway point, for a break. Most of the day in this quaint little town was spent relaxing in the local swimming pool. I gave our bags to the young attendant and told him to look after them as they contained $2,000 in cash. "Yeah, right," he laughed. When we picked them up, I showed him the cash. It was safe in those days, and his surprised look made us wonder, had he known, he may have been tempted. We made good use of the whole day and continued our journey west that evening. We arrived in Vancouver and immediately headed towards the Pacific Ocean and plunged in fully clothed. What a thrill! This was a dream come true. Sightseeing, including beautiful Stanley Park with its terrific zoo, and much more took up most of the day. We did the whole tourist bit, even the shopping. I bought Rita a small jade elephant, and every time I look at it now, I feel cheap. It's so small. But you know what they say, it's the thought that counts. On the same shopping expedition, we looked at a turquoise and silver bracelet and ring set. The price of $140 was deemed too expensive. However, we found out that Navajo Indians made it down in Oregon. This was in our flight path, so off we went. We had a short stop in Seattle, Washington, where we met a friendly German couple who spoke no English. We had a brief chat, an arm-waving session, and reboarded the bus. We reached Portland, Oregon, the next morning. This must be the cleanest city in the world, and proudly boasts free bus transportation throughout the whole of the city. After breakfast and a wash-up, Rita reminded me about the jewelry, so we made our way to a market famous for these items. The identical set was about $12, so I splurged. I should mention that we ate very simply during our trip. We bought lots of biscuits, crackers, and a lot of muesli. We got used to these survival rations, but occasionally ate in restaurants. Did I hear something about where we washed? Most of the bus stations have excellent facilities for travelers. Some even have showers. Hotels are also a good source for this purpose for people who are cheeky, so keeping clean, etc. was not a problem. The plan then took us to Reno, Nevada. Breathtaking is the only word to describe the biggest little city in the world. We arrived around 6 a.m., and the place looked deserted. An open door tempted me to look inside. I thought I'd come face to face with a cleaning lady or something. What a misconception. It was a casino in full swing. It hadn't dawned on me that they never, ever close. Instead of the cleaning lady, I was met by a gorgeous lass in fishnet stockings and D-cups struggling to contain her assets. This lovely creature asked me what I wanted to drink. God, this was great. I ordered a double whiskey to the amazement of flabbergasted Rita. "It's 6 in the morning," she said. My reply was something to the effect that the girl may not ask me again, so I wanted to take advantage of the offer. I was wrong. I had the same offer many more times, and by 10 a.m. I could just about remember Rita's name. Reno at nighttime is brilliant, literally. There are thousands of light bulbs advertising the various casinos and other places of entertainment. It was hard to leave Reno that night, but we were eager to press on towards San Francisco, you know where that is, via Sacramento, capital of California. I'm getting goosebumps typing this. San Francisco was everything we expected. Emulating the great Tony Bennett, we strolled around this exciting city singing, "I left my heart in you nowhere." The streets were so steep. Nob Hill was so posh. The cable cars were so old, but great fun. After battling our way through a crowd, we managed to board a cable car. They've been around a long time, but they are still the biggest tourist attraction. We arrived at Fisherman's Wharf. What a place. Seafood everywhere. It's difficult to hurry on a full stomach, but we did, to Pier 39. This is an old pier converted to a shopper's paradise. It's a maze of attractions and stores, and the atmosphere was electric. Alcatraz is visible from the end of the pier, so this enticed us to take a boat trip, to tour the place of our own free will. It was eerie. We took the guided tour and tried to imagine what it would be like to be locked up in that soul-destroying and secure place. No wonder nobody escaped from there, so we were told. I'll bet every inmate tried, or at least thought about it. The place was awesome. Al Capone's old cell is a favorite stopping point. You really must try and visit the place, but it's not used as a prison anymore, so don't bother to get yourself arrested. You'll have to save up. Only one upsetting moment while we were in this city. It was here, in late August 1979, where we read about the murder of Lord Mountbatten, such a prominent person cruelly taken from us in that way. We were horrified. Feeling hungry and extravagant, we went in McDonald's. Hey, everything's relative. There was a bit of a commotion at the counter, so I investigated. It was the German lady we had met in Seattle trying to explain to the young lass behind the counter that she didn't want 9 hamburgers. I helped as best I could, and we joined the couple for a meal. Nice people, but we have lost touch, I'm sad to say. We stayed in a hotel overnight and spent the next day playing tourist. We had to see the renowned Golden Gate Bridge, which did not disappoint us. A bonus was a visit to an old fort at the end of the bridge that we had seen in an episode of Streets of San Francisco. If you ever go there, be sure to take a map. We strayed into the Presidio, a military camp, and had a hell of a job finding our way back to the city. This city of excitement provided lots to do right up to the late hour when we had to board our bus for Los Angeles. We arrived in the City of Angels around 7 a.m. Following completion of our personal ablutions, we ate a small breakfast and planned our day. We needn't have bothered. There was a local bus strike on, just for the one day. Our thoughts went back to a past trip to France. It was closed. We didn't know it was Bastille Day. What with this and the Tea Party incident, I'm beginning to get a complex. As we couldn't get to our first choice, Malibu, we opted for another well-known city, about an hour down the road. The Greyhound bus wasn't leaving for Long Beach until at 9 a.m., so we had an hour or so to kill. We strolled around the bus station for a while and came across a camera crew surrounded by a crowd. Enquiries revealed that they were making a TV commercial for Greyhound Bus Line, would you believe? I told them about our travels, and they invited me to participate. I said, "My wife's better looking," and pushed Rita in front of the camera. She did great. In fact, one of the staff told her she looked bubbly and stood a good chance of seeing herself on TV. She gave Rita a $1 bill and a short agreement stating that if her shot was used, she would get $250 sent to the address in England. The next saga will be a bit lengthy, so sit comfortably and buckle your seatbelts. You may smoke if you wish. Off we went to Long Beach. We stayed all day and never saw the beach. Here's why. Following directions from a friendly native, we headed for the ocean. On the way there, I noticed a camera crew. Not twice in one day, surely. The man we saw first with the baggy pants turned out to be the director, told me they were making a film called Beggarman Thief. It was a sequel to Richmond Poorman. The stars were, in alphabetical order of course, Glen Ford, Lynn Redgrave, and Gene Simmons. You can stick around, but don't get in anybody's way, he told us. So we did and enjoyed every minute of it. Do you remember Dynasty? The chauffeur in that series was played by a super guy called Wayne Northrup. We ended up sitting with Wayne outside his caravan watching the hustle and bustle of filmmaking. We had a laugh when one crewman asked Wayne if he could use his van for a few minutes. "Sure," said the obliging Wayne. The crewman immediately produced a gorgeous female from somewhere and dragged her into the caravan. You should have seen the van rock. A lifetime later for me, that is. I was fantasizing. He came out and muttered, "Have you got a cigarette, buddy?" People are the same no matter where you go. Gene Simmons approached. I rushed up to her and my exact words were, "I'd like you to meet my wife Rita." The lovely lady must have understood Lancashire lads and their polite bluntness, as she very kindly obliged. Introductions and photographs followed. Jean didn't have her camera with her, so I took them all. Thank you, Miss Simmons, for all the wonderful years of pleasure you have given us. Glen Ford was a star and a perfect gentleman. I never thought I'd be stuck for words, but I was in awe, and the only words I could get out were, "How's your back, Glen?" Someone had told me he suffered from this, but I felt a right dickhead. Can't remember his exact reply, but we had a good chat about our trip, and he even asked me if we'd managed to get a bit part as extras. When I told him we hadn't, he ushered us down to the scene then being shot and showed us how to ensure we didn't end up on the editing room floor. Unfortunately, Rita mustn't have been listening, but I was on TV, briefly, in England, on the 3rd of January 1980. Back to the filming. Lynn Redgrave wasn't on the set that day, but we had a lot of fun with the extras. Alcohol was taboo on the set during filming. When I produced a small bottle of Bacardi, friends came out of the woodwork pushing polystyrene cups towards my rapidly emptying bottle. It was great, and we have seen most of them since on TV. The Bacardi must have affected one of the extras, as he invited us to an upcoming party in the valley, where one could get anything one desires in the way of sex. He was graphically describing the whole sex scene to my embarrassed wife, who was going redder by the second, while he played pocket pool. I couldn't persuade Rita to go, even for educational purposes. We spent the whole day on the set and were invited to a wrapping up party that night on board the Queen Mary, which, as you know, is permanently docked in Long Beach. We explained we didn't have appropriate clothing, thanked them profusely for the memorable day, and regretfully declined. It was so late when we got back to LA, we had to board the bus immediately for our next city. Las Vegas, affectionately referred to as Lost Wages, is my favorite city. It is a wonderland of entertainment, and you can taste the atmosphere. All this, and good weather. Frankly, I'm having difficulty in finding the right words to describe it. That really must give you an idea of how much I love it. I was a bit perturbed on arrival in that I could not see an advertisement for a show starring the late Dean Martin. I finally saw a sign being changed around 8 a.m. at the MGM Grand. Apparently, someone had goofed, and the sign was being put up on Dino's opening night. I was the first one to buy a ticket for that night's show. The dinner and performance were spectacular, and made so by the fact that we were sat with a lovely couple on a table only a few feet away from Dino, my favorite singer. The day was spent flitting from casino to casino. I'm sure you can sense the thrill of it all. The grandeur of these luxurious dens of delight is so seductive, it is hard to resist the temptation to try your luck. There is no excuse to leave the casino, as everything you need is at hand, either free or damn near. Drinks of all kinds flow like water, and there are toilets all over the place. Also, if you are bursting, there are little plastic buckets everywhere. They are, in fact, for your coins, but I guess they could be dual purpose in an emergency. Talking of buckets, a traveler was taken short whilst walking in the countryside. He asked a nearby farmer if he could use his facility and was directed to an outhouse. On his return, he commented that the door of the wooden hut had no lock on it. "That's okay," said the unconcerned farmer. "We've never had a bucket of shit stolen yet. If you are a food fanatic, book your flight today to Vegas. I've never seen so many varieties of food in such exciting places at such low prices. I won't tell you how much I lost on the slots, but you know the big statues outside Caesar's Palace? I paid for them. I highly recommend a visit to this heaven on earth. Little did I know that 11 years later I would spend my 50th birthday here with my brother and his family. I'm now drooling badly, so I'm getting us out of here. I haven't said much about the buses themselves, so I'll take this opportunity. They are very comfortable with seats that recline slightly and lots of legroom. The well-qualified drivers are very courteous and go out of their way to make your journey enjoyable. Truly, there are tens of thousands of these distinctive vehicles seen all over the North American continent at all hours of the day and night. They keep to the schedules like clockwork, rarely late, and it often amused us to be in the middle of nowhere at an ungodly hour to be picked up on time by the good old Greyhound bus. Their network is a credit to the company. Having said all that about Greyhound, the next driver ticked me off, but only a bit. We set off around midnight for Flagstaff, Arizona, to visit one area of the Grand Canyon. Everybody leaving Lost Wages is exhausted, and all the passengers were desperate to get to sleep. This particular driver must have liked the sound of his own voice. He never stopped telling us, with the help of a microphone and loudspeakers, about the passing scenery. This is midnight, for God's sake. Who the hell's interested in struggling to keep their eyes open just to try to look through a steamed-up window into total darkness? I politely suggested he shut up, and he complied with my request, complimented by shouts of agreement from several others. The silence didn't last long. We were all just nodding off when Motormouth with the mic informed us that we were now passing over the Hoover Dam. I couldn't resist. I shouted, "You'll be thrown over the bloody thing if you don't switch your mic off." We had a quiet night from then on. In fairness, though, the illuminated dam is quite visible and impressive, so it humbles me to say, "Thank you, driver. Sorry I shouted at you." We arrived in Flagstaff and arranged a quick visit to the Grand Canyon. The view across this particular gorge was magnificent. The whole panoramic landscape literally took our breath away. The little furry animals, I'm not very good with animal recognition, were obviously accustomed to tourists as they fearlessly scurried all around us. The quick trip soon ended, and we continued on to Phoenix. Rita made a few notes during the trip, and I've just read that we arrived there at 4:15 p.m. and the temperature was over 100. Thankfully, it plummeted to around 80 degrees during the night. If you are traveling in unfamiliar territory, a good source of accommodation information is the local Chamber of Commerce. They recommended the Arizona Ranch House. That was a good choice. The jacuzzi was very relaxing and private. Our tummies were now telling us to find a dining place quickly. We were in luck. There was a Mexican restaurant adjacent to the hotel, so in we trotted and looked at the menu while drinking a cold beer. Remember your first time looking at a Mexican food menu? The waiter recommended a platter with a bit of everything on it. We finished this mound of excellent but extremely hot food and about 2 pitchers of water. This trip is, as I said it would, turning into a long saga. I hope you don't mind. But in case you do, we'll zip through El Paso, Texas, with a condensed story about a side trip to Juarez, Mexico. The first stop was at a bar for a beer and an attempt to get Rita's legs back to normal. I should explain. When you travel for long periods in a sitting position without breaks in the prone position, body fluids tend to settle in the lower legs, causing acute swelling. Unfortunately, she couldn't lie down drinking a beer, so she had to persevere. After the pit stop, we bought a few souvenirs and proceeded back across the border. A local spiv approached with a jacket full of gold rings at a bargain price. I fell for it and paid him far too much money for a piece of junk. You can't win them all. We continued on to San Antonio, still in the Lone Star State. This beautiful city is the home of what must be one of the most famous shrines in the Western world, the Alamo. The most solemn place I have ever been in. We went round the grounds and the building on a guided tour. If anybody can do this without weeping, they have no feelings. The local tour guide explained the history, which you can look up if you are interested. I would like to mention the sincerity with which she emphasized the gratitude that Americans feel towards all the countries that participated in defending Texas from the invading Mexican army. I never knew that there were so many countries represented in this famous battle, including the United Kingdom. Also, we discovered that the legendary Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie, to name but 2, were actual people that gave their lives for this cause. If you ever get the chance, please visit this heart-rending memorial to the men who willingly gave their lives during the Texas-Mexican Independence War of 1836. Back to the bus station, where I managed to create another memorable moment. We had met a gang of English tourists, and we all wanted to sit together, at least get on the same bus. The bus line screwed up the scheduling, the only time this happened, and we were going to end up on different buses. I somewhat stupidly told the Texan manager that he couldn't organize a piss-up in a brewery. He calmly took the aggressive criticism and without hesitation put on another bus for just our English group. Many thanks, and sorry I lost my rag buddy. We arrived in New Orleans, and the first objective was to sample grits. Woolworth's cafeteria was convenient, and the price was right, so we dashed in and placed our order. The dollop of grits looked like porridge and tasted like nothing else on earth, or should I say very bland. But the lady at the counter made up for our disappointment. She smiled and said, "Y'all come back now, you hear?" Once again, we found that all the streets that I had up until now thought to be fictitious do actually exist. It was, therefore, exciting to stomp down Basin and Bourbon streets, etc. The French Quarter was like a magic kingdom with all the lace balconies, courtyards, and famous named establishments such as Pat O'Brien's, Al Hertz, and the Mecca for all serious jazz enthusiasts, Preservation Hall. I'll leave you to imagine the thrill of it all. Only one thing marred our visit. We had our cameras stolen and lost our photographs of the Alamo. We dragged ourselves away to catch the bus to South Florida via Tallahassee, the capital city, then to Palm Beach, and on to St. Petersburg, where we stayed the night. The following morning, we headed for Miami, where we planned a few days' rest. We had been on the road for nearly 3 weeks and badly needed a break. The bus pulled into the station in Miami Beach in the mid-afternoon, and we made inquiries about accommodation. We found a reasonable hotel, $70 for 6 days, which was extremely cheap even back then. Our modest room was right opposite the beach, so off we went. The weather was superb, and we wanted to take advantage. Whilst we were being fried by the intense rays of the sun, Rita saw 2 girls walking in our direction and shouted, "Aren't these the 2 English lasses backpacking round the states we met in San Antonio?" They were, and Nikki from London and Jill from Halifax rushed over and greeted us with open arms. They related their sad tale of woe about having their purses stolen and being left without money and passports. The appropriate authorities were looking after the passport situation, and we helped them with the other loss. We bought the distraught youngsters some food and offered them the use of one of the double beds in our room. This would avoid the dangerous plan of them sleeping on the beach that night. They accepted, and we all spent a pleasant day together. The sharing arrangement went off okay, and nobody flashed anything worth looking at until the next morning. I am an early riser, and about 6 a.m. crept past their bed to get to the coffee machine. I was faced with a dilemma. The gorgeous 18-year-old was lying in bed, sheets thrown back and wearing only a flimsy pair of knickers. Should I make the beverage or what? I looked at sleeping Rita, and the choice was made. We all enjoyed the coffee, and the girls left to visit a good friend up the coast who would lend them some money. Do you ever wonder at a later date about earlier decisions? After a relaxing for 4 days and an enjoyable trip down the Keys, we had to change our plans. It had by now started to rain heavily, and our week's stay in the sunshine was cut short by reacting to the forecast of Hurricane Frederick hitting within the next couple of days. The hurricane did hit Miami, but by now we were enjoying ourselves at Disney World in Orlando. Is life really fair? America has Disney World and SeaWorld, etc. England has Carpet World. We had a fairy tale time in this children's utopia, and then modified our original route to include trips to Nashville, and we just had to see Chattanooga, the choo-choo place. The hurricane, although by now somewhat subdued, arrived in Nashville just after we did. Unfortunately, time did not permit a visit to the Grand Ole Opry, but we savored the short stay, dried our clothes under the hand, dryer in the washrooms, and moved on. We kept to our new plan and traveled for about 15 hours through the magnificent scenery of the East Coast states. We made slight detours, now and then, to visit noteworthy cities and sites. The president was in Florida assessing the hurricane damage, and we were now in his hometown where it was having its last fling, very heavy rain and windy. After visiting the many museums, space centers, and monuments of Washington, D.C., we decided to leave for our final destination, New York. What can I say? I think the whole world is familiar with the attractions of this city. We had been there before, but still found the place exciting. We made sure we knew where the airport was and tried to allow sufficient time to arrive there after seeing all the sights. Well, aren't all plans supposed to go wrong or at least give you a scare? The Staten Island Ferry, which passes the Statue of Liberty, is normally a 25-minute trip,